Too bad. The Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford, council meeting at 7 p.m. on Monday, March the 23rd, 2020. A few things I'd like to say before we get formally into our meeting. And as you can see in our agenda packages is on the top end, it says an important notice. As required by provincial legislation, this meeting is open to the public. However, due to the unprecedented situation in Ontario related to the COVID-19 pandemic and current state of emergency declared by the province, for the purposes of public safety, we are requesting that the public not attend this meeting. Having said that, as we all know, our meetings are recorded, and staff have been able to confirm today with our IT providers that this evening's recorded meeting will be posted on our webpage and people will be able to access the video online. Typically, you would come into the office to get a copy or in our library, even listen to it at the library. So there will not be the need for the public to come and get and have that interaction with staff. It will be available on our webpage. The notice will go up, I would think sometime tomorrow on our webpage, that it is indeed available, and to repeat, people can access it on their computer and listen to it that way. So that's a good thing that we're able to do for the residents to continue our openness and transparency, even though this meeting is open and we've kind of said it's not a good thing to come tonight because of the pandemic. Moving up, I don't know why there would be questions, but I see three hands going up. I'll go starting to my left to the right. Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, I appreciate that what we're doing with the recordings and things like that, and that was something that was always in place. My question and my concern is why are we even opening it to the public? I understand all about openness and all of that stuff, but given the situation, why would we invite up to, what are we allowing here if they did come? What would be the cutoff point? 10? I mean,
Probably 6, Your Worship. Just that's
why would we invite 6 people to come here, quite possibly bringing with them infections, when they can just as readily listen to it on the recording? And that is more than open enough. Plus, I would question anybody's purpose in questioning the authenticity, the honesty, the integrity of this council, because we would refrain from opening this council, these meetings to the public.
Technically, under the Municipal Act, you cannot preclude them. Notwithstanding your comments, that is why we said we encourage people not to come. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect world. We did the best we could, and that's the decision that was made at the time prior to. I'm just answering. Sorry, Mr. Malloy, trying to answer your question.
I'm talking about going forward, not today. Today is today. That's it. But I would then question 2 issues. One would be what considering the statements made by the Premier today about closing everything down, whether or not that would include councils and things like that, which I think it should. And secondly, I would be more than eager to stand up against some sort of charge against us for not allowing the public to come here, given the situation. And I think we as a municipality should.
Don't disagree with your comments at all. Just on the point about what the Premier said about closing things down, it had to do with businesses. Unfortunately, he was silent. I was just saying, unfortunately, at this point, nothing has been said specifically about municipalities. So that may happen. And we are also, though, have protocols put in place, and staff continue to work on and look at opportunities for people not to have to come to work to do their work. Mr. Foster.
More of a technical question, Your Worship. I'm not sure how effective that tiny recorder is. Would it be perhaps more beneficial to have it centered on you as opposed to our clerk, so that at least your comments and your summaries would be at least recorded, and any questions that come from council, you would repeat them?
Very good point, yes, because the microphone is limited. You're a good point, and moved it a little closer, and hopefully it's capturing my voice. Thank you for the question.
Should I repeat my comments then?
No.
Mr.
Cameron.
Very simple question. You said video, and I'm sure that you meant recording?
Yes, if I thank you, Mr. Cameron just made the comment that I had said video, and I was referring to the audio. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have some other opening comments to make, and it's comments that cannot be said enough nor often enough. And I had my notes ready prior to our Prime Minister saying enough is enough, stay at home. And first of all, I hope everybody is staying safe and sound and healthy. Yes, stay at home. Nonetheless, the messaging has always been, for quite a while now, to practice social distancing at every opportunity. Wash your hands regularly and properly. Avoid group meetings. Avoid unnecessary travel. Check on your neighbors, particularly those who may be vulnerable, and work from home if possible. Having said that, to underscore what the Prime Minister said and the reason he's saying them about enough is enough, stay at home. In a teleconference last Tuesday with municipal mayors, there was our Municipal Affairs Minister Clark, the Deputy Premier and Health Minister Elliott, and Ontario's Medical Officer of Health. There were a number of things that they were outlining. A lot of them are, don't want to say repetitive, but they were reinforcing the messages. The Medical Officer of Health, near the end of his comments, said, the next 2 weeks are critical, and probably the next 2 after that. And his voice kind of trailed. You can take from that we are in critical times. We do need to pay attention and do what we've been advised to do. We can do it. We know we can do it. We have to do it. You can't say it enough. As the Prime Minister said, enough is enough. Stay at home. Other things are happening, and they take time to be clarified as to what and how they will be rolled out. And an example would be, we've heard the Premier say that there will be support, and the words are municipalities, food banks, homeless shelters, and individuals. That was, I think, said last week when they announced the hundreds of millions of dollars of assistance. It took until today to roll out outlining how those services and support are going to be provided. And I'll just read you in part the release today from the province. The province will be providing municipalities and organizations that administer social services with funding to support them in their response to COVID-19. The funding will help municipalities and social services providers such as shelters, food banks, emergency services, charities, nonprofits to continue to deliver their critical services, hire additional staff, and find ways to promote social distancing, self-isolation, and keep clients safe and healthy. Ontario's municipal service managers will determine local needs and distribute the funding, ensuring clients are receiving the support they need. That is specifically in our area, through the United Counties of Leeds and Granville, the Social Services Department. As you can see, there are a lot of detail in there, and that's the vehicle by which those dollars will be expended, if you will. It took a while to do that. The reason I mention that is, from a business point of view, we have a lot of small businesses, and the United Counties Economic Development Department had set out through our Chambers of Commerce is a note indicating that the counties started a web page to support businesses during the COVID crisis. It can be found at, and it's the website www.investleadsgranville.com/COVID-19. And they're encouraging businesses and members to subscribe to the page as updates are occurring daily to the website, as new information and programs become available for businesses. The counties is bringing together a business support working group on Wednesday of this week. This group includes economic development representatives from each municipality in the region, chambers of commerce, CFDCs, business improvement associations, employment services, and various ministries and support agencies connected to the region. Its purpose is to share information and communicate resources available to the business community. A draft business survey will be reviewed to give them a better sense of the impact and the needs of businesses. So, they also sent out last week to the Chambers of Commerce to distribute to all their members to do a survey. And part of that survey was doing an analysis of the survey so they can put together a package to present to the provincial government to say, these are the kinds of programs the business communities need. So again, similar to the social services program announced today, it will take a wee bit of time for things to be identified as to what the needs are and what the best vehicle is going to be down the road to deliver those support programs that may be identified. So again, for information, the Chambers of Commerce in our region and in American Wolford particularly are aware of this, and indeed they are engaged in that in the working group that the counties is coordinating. So that's a good thing. The last comment I may make is it's important that we stay to plain, simple messaging. Council members, you're well versed. It was in our communique from last week. It's the same communique, if you will, today in terms of the social distancing and distancing. It's not complicated. It's a shared communication. It's a supported communication that we as leaders in our community, when you have conversation with somebody at a safe distance on the phone, etc., underscore the importance of the situation that we're in, and that you as an individual need to step up and as the Prime Minister says, stay home if you can, or that social distancing, etc. Last and not least, I want to make a particular comment to our staff. We are always concerned as much for them as anybody else about their health and safety and the importance of it. Measures are in place for all of our staff in the municipality to tend to their needs. We do need to respect their needs, and we definitely appreciate the work that they've been doing, ensuring that the services continue to be delivered to all of our residents. We are allocating resources on a highest priority basis, and to date, we have been able to maintain all of our services. While they may be delivered in a wee bit different way, they are being delivered, and we appreciate all of the work that all of our staff are doing. And just to reiterate, we are ensuring that their needs are in place, and we do need to respect their needs. Having said that, we will move on to our agenda. And I will first ask members, does anyone have a pecuniary interest? And if they do, what is the general nature of it?
No.
And there's no indication of a pecuniary interest. Thank you for that. I do have looking for a motion to approve the agenda. It will be, there are a couple of amendments on the agenda. I see Mr. Foster as the mover, and a seconder would be, thank you, Mr. Cameron. And the amendments are under 5, under building. That is removed from this meeting's agenda. And there are 2 additions, and both will be under the CAO's section number 8. One is regarding the library. It's a printout of the library Facebook page, I believe that is.
Website page.
Website page, thank you. And the other is an amendment to our procedural bylaw for consideration for electronic voting. So those are the 3 amendments. And as I say, we have a mover, Mr. Foster, and a seconder, Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of America Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the regular council meeting of March the 23rd, 2020 as amended. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And members, you have copies of the minutes of our meeting on March the 9th and a special meeting also on March the 9th. And I would move in a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Mr. Helpney, and the seconder was Mr. Foster. Thank you, sir. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of America Wolford does hereby approve the following. 1. Minutes of the regular council meeting of March the 9th, 2020 as circulated, and the minutes of the special council meeting of March the 9th, 2020 as circulated. Are there any questions, comments, errors, and or omissions? Mr. Malloy.
Just one general question, I guess. I recognize the questions on the public question period to council, and there's all the questions there. That's a two-part question. I assume all of the people ask the questions get a response.
So Mr. Malloy is asking, referencing the questions asked during the open question period and wanted to know if everybody is getting a response to the question. And I'll turn to Mr. Robertson for that.
Sure, Worship. Whenever there's a direction from staff, a direction from council for staff to provide a response, we do.
Yep.
Oh, well then, and a secondary question to that, would that not just be automatic? I mean, do we actually have to say to staff, answer the questions from?
Depends whether it might be in the form of a report. I'm not sure of any particular question you're referring to, or you, Mr. Robertson.
So to clarify, Your Worship, the procedure bylaw says that question periods for questions to council.
Right.
So they're not typically to be directed to staff, although we try to accommodate wherever we can.
Right.
But so unless council directs a question for us and asks us to bring back an answer, that's not done.
And that is the case, I think, with the, is there an example you're
Oh,
thinking
no,
of?
it's just a
General
Just a
question?
general question.
Thank you.
Because the other part of the question was going to be, when you give answers to the inquirers, is it possible that council could get a copy of the answers?
Would the answers not be done at our open council meeting?
I don't remember that.
Well, through Your Worship, so typically we do try to accommodate by answering where we can. If council asks us,
Right.
if we're
Yeah.
acknowledged to respond, we will.
Right.
So that's usually verbal. Then we typically do not follow up with a separate response to the resident.
Okay. Thank you.
But do we never follow up with a?
Only if there's a follow-up required, I believe Mr. Robertson said. But if there was a follow-up, it would come through at the council meeting, because the question is asked at the council
As long as it
meeting.
does
Yeah.
come through, okay.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that is carried. Thank you. And moving on in our agenda, under planning, we have the supporting resolutions regarding the provincially significant wetland designations, and the motion is to receive for information purposes. So if I got a mover and a seconder, thank you, Mr. Halpney, and the seconder would be Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved, the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor Wolford does hereby receive the following with respect to Council's Resolution Number Resolution Number R-029-2020 regarding provincially significant wetlands designations for information purposes. 1. Township of Hudson's correspondence dated March the 9th, 2020. City of Belleville's correspondence dated March the 10th, 2020. Township of McKellar's correspondence dated March the 10th, 2020. Municipality of Northern Bruce Peninsula's correspondence dated March the 5th, 2020. Township of Peely's correspondence dated February the 28th, 2020. Township of La Vallee's correspondence dated March 12th, 2020. Township of Harley's correspondence dated March the 13th, 2020. And the Township of Casey's correspondence dated March the 13th, 2020. Members, all in favor to receive this for information purposes? Thank you very much. It's carried.
Good question.
Mr. Malloy?
Are the residents that brought this forward to council, are they still receiving this input?
Mr. Robertson?
Your Worship, I'm just going to defer to the Deputy Clerk here. I don't believe we're sending all of these to them. We have certainly sent the initial batch.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll continue to do so.
Well, that's not what I heard.
We can, if council would like us directed.
So, guys, so back up half a step then. Is there a need to send them copies of all the municipalities supporting?
You know what? I think they need to know that there are people in the province that are supporting
Yep.
them. But I would be happy that if they just, even if you just sent
A
list
copy of what we, of our
what we
The motion
received.
was receiving for
Yeah, they don't
information
need-
purposes.
They don't need the whole letter, although the letter could be,
And I'm seeing a nod of heads from other members supporting the suggestion that we send a copy of the motion indicating what we've done up until now, the previous ones, and continue to do so as we receive correspondence from municipalities supporting the resolution, and staff will continue to do so. Thank you very much. The next item under planning, members, is, and it's a wee bit of housekeeping, if you recall, for the zoning change on the Burville McKnight property on Brock Street. And you will recall the planner indicated that it was, part of the process was to repeal the original site plan so that the process could move forward with the new zoning and site plan as required moving forward. So that's what this is doing. So if I can have a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 25-2020, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 31-00, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 25-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions, members? Mr. Cameron.
Just a clarification here. We're citing therefore the Council Corporation of the Township of Lanark Highlands enacts the following. I'm sort of lost on that. Not really sure what that is doing in that statement.
oh, yeah.
Oh, good, thanks.
Your Worship, sir, our apologies. I believe this was provided to us by our planner, and it's something that we didn't catch. Unfortunately, we've been correcting a lot of these mistakes from our former planner, I should say. So perhaps I could suggest, I think, Your Worship, what we can do is make a manual edit to that for procedural purposes today, and then if Your Worship would like, we could then tidy it up and duplicate that with a proper.
So perhaps could you repeat that a little louder so everyone can hear?
So if you like, Your Worship, what we can do is just do a manual amendment to that today for procedure purposes and approve an amended version of it.
Yep.
And then we can clean that up with you
With
later on.
a clean printed
A
copy.
clean printed copy of the version.
So it is, yes, so it's now therefore the Council of the Corporation, I'll put in the Village of Merrickville Wolford and initial it.
And our appreciation to the council for catching that.
Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, all in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. And now we will move on to number 7, finance, and this is reference to our budget of 2020. And members will know that we'll say nothing has changed since our final draft as our working groups and the presentations that staff did on our behalf at the Community Center in Merrickville and Centennial Hall in Easton's Corners. And this is important that we pass this, obviously, any time of the year, but particularly get it done this evening, so under the circumstances, the municipality can continue to function. So I will read the first one is of the bylaw regarding water, wastewater.
Correct, Your Worship. And just to draw your attention to Schedule B, just wanted to make sure that it's clear to council that there was a slight typo in the version of the agenda package that was sent to council, but you have a corrected version here.
Yes.
Correct, Your Worship. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you very much. So a mover and a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. And a seconder, I didn't see the hand. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 2020, being a bylaw to adopt the 2020 operating capital and water and wastewater budgets and the 2020 salary grid be read a first and second time, and the bylaw 2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Are there any questions, members? None noted, all in favor?
I have a
Oh,
question.
Mr. Cameron.
I just a clarification, the salary grid, when we were discussing the budget at the table, why was that not included in our package, or is that something that we needed to discuss at the time?
Defer to Treasurer, Your Worship.
Thank you, yes. We did indicate and discuss at our working meeting that the salary line items included the 1.7% cost of living, so this just reflects that.
Okay, I was just wondering why we didn't actually see a copy of that at the budget.
Okay,
For us,
again.
for consideration, sort of a bit of a surprise when I was going through this. So it was just, and also that when I read through it, I didn't really see anything that indicated a 3.13% increase. There's a lot of numbers in there, but there was nothing that on the paper that physically said that your taxes will be increasing by 3.13.
Yeah, we don't pass that along with the bylaw.
You don't do that? Okay.
It's in the tax rate schedule. but-
Yeah, well, for clarification for the public, when they're going through the documentation, that they would, maybe at the top of the page, be indicated that this budget reflects a 3.13% increase, so that they know what they're looking at. It might be helpful for them. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Oops, sorry. And this motion is the motion to set the tax rates. So I'll move in a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. And a seconder would be, thank you, Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 23-2020 being a bylaw to set the 2020 tax rates be read a first and second time, and the bylaw 23-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions? No questions noted. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And I would just make the comment, I made it, we collectively made it before. We did worked very closely with staff in our working group meetings to bring a budget that is in round numbers a zero rate increase budget on the operating and capital. Asterisk beside the capital, we have, as was well explained in our public meetings, that the circumstance where we had to replace the compactor at the landfill site, and it was critical that that be replaced. Staff did a great job in finding a suitable and appropriate compactor to maintain our certificate of approval at our landfill site. And so the 3.13 tax rate increase is a reflection of the expense that we had to incur this year to maintain that certificate of approval. So it was a hard-working budget to bring it down to zero, and I think it's a good budget moving forward for our financial sustainability starting in that long term, and it's a good budget for this year in 2020. So again, thank you to staff and council members for working together on the budget. The next is our new proposed procurement bylaw. So I'll move in a seconder to put that motion on the table, please. Thank you, Mr. Malloy, and seconded by Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby receive Report Finance-06-2020 regarding a new proposed procurement policy, and that Council gives favorable consideration to bylaw 24-2020. And the procurement bylaw essentially sets out the process and the authority, if you will, to go through procurement of goods and services for the municipality. It's not a contract. It's a process. Any expenditures, whether it's by a contract or not, come through from staff to the council table ultimately. So to repeat, it's setting in place a process, a policy process. Are there any comments from staff?
No, Your Worship, I think you've said it eloquently enough. Thank you.
And any questions from council? Mr. Cameron?
I have a few questions, probably
Yep.
mostly just clarifications more than likely.
Yep.
On page 8, there's a single source, sole source, and special circumstance sources. I was wondering that in those cases, do we get a quote prior to moving forward with any one of those? I didn't read it in there. I was just wondering if that was the case, if we had to go that way.
Question from Mr. Cameron, answer from Mr. Robertson.
Thanks, Your Worship. So, I mean, a principle in the policy, you'll see at the outset of principles, goals, objectives, and so forth, is to always, wherever possible, use a competitive marketplace for the municipality's advantage. So single sourcing and sole sourcing are used when it's to the municipality's advantage, where you have a situation as described in the definitions there that the councilor's referring to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You had another
I was
question,
just-
Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I read that at the beginning of the package, but as I was going through there, it just wasn't, like, for special circumstances, you know, if we're in a position where we need to do something right away, I was just wondering if that procedure laid out in the previous pages was the same function that we would follow for this. And that's,
Yes.
and Mr. Robertson indicated that is.
That's the case, Your Worship. So with single sourcing, again, it's for the municipality's advantage. So, you know, an example of single sourcing might be where you've already got a preferred contractor at a preferred rate. You've gone through a procurement process previously, and you know that by continuing with them, you can do better.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And another question, page 11, when advertising and purchasing, it says that we would send out any requests for quotes within a paper circle within the village, meaning Marrickville Wolford, the municipality. But there are certain parts of our municipality that don't receive the papers that we generally use. Will there be any effort to contact those businesses or to solicit them to get onto a list so that they're not left out whenever there's a required call for RPF?
So, Your Worship, there are laws now in place that bind the municipality not to selectively using bias towards a local service provider or producer.
Right.
So we have to be careful with that. When we say that it's within the circulation within the village, that's the minimum. So there are requirements. I can defer to the treasurer if you want to get into more details on this, but we typically, I believe, choose the local newspaper that we feel has the best circulation to provide that.
And I think that's typically the verbiage is as a general use. If it's newspapers that have the widest and broadest circulation, and I think you indicated we utilize more than one newspaper, and it's the best efforts from that perspective.
Yeah, I was just concerned that some businesses may get left out, would not be aware there was a call for work within the municipality, because there
Thank
are
you.
businesses on the outskirts that don't get into any of those circulations. They get circulations from Smith Falls or Kentville. They don't necessarily get from here, just to be inclusive.
Well, in
give
some,
everybody the opportunity.
in some papers, some newspapers might not be delivered to your house. Some you might actually have to buy it. So I think that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a newspaper that is delivered to your house. An example might be if you utilize the Brockville Recorder and Times, you have to purchase that. But I think also though the newspapers that are delivered to our community are also available online, and I think with people that are in business would probably be checking them on a regular basis anyway to see if there's any possibility of somebody looking for business that has an ad in the newspaper.
So the answer would be we use our best efforts.
Absolutely, sir.
And page 15, I have a question about when staff makes a recommendation to council. We put out an RFP and we require 3 bids. when that bid is presented to council with the approval of staff, the staff is recommending this certain bid become the winning bid, are all the other subsequent bids brought to the table for our review as well?
So, Your Worship, there is a procedure, it's prescribed that we need to follow. Typically, when you're receiving bids on an RFP, there's a procedure where you open all of the bids in place at a prescribed date and time. All bidders can attend and see where they stand in terms of comparison to the other bidders, and then staff determines which is the best bid at that time.
And bring that information to council.
And then we bring that information to council. Typically, we would summarize the 3 bids as received,
Yeah.
so that council has a comparator and can see how we did in the marketplace.
And the process that we went through to get that.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank
the
you.
answer would be yes.
Correct.
We do that, okay. Thank you. And page 32, the Schedule C, Purchasing and Execution Authority, it does say in pages before this page that all things come to council for approval. But in this schedule, it doesn't indicate that. Is that just an oversight, or is that just...
So Your Worship, I'd have to understand where previously Councillor Cameron's
Well,
referring
it
to.
states that whenever an RFP or whatever and is issued and there's work to be done in the municipality, that is brought forward by staff to council for recommendation, what we were just speaking of. It does say in the previous pages, but on the schedule here, it says here the dollar value over $50,001. The purchasing authority is the CAO department head, and the head of council, and a direct acquisition agreement. But in any of the other slots here, it doesn't indicate that, these are all subject to approval of council. I just wondered if that's not usually included in this schedule, or is that it was an oversight that we didn't put that in? Because it does indicate in other pages that council needs to approve these. I just was wondering why it never said that on this page.
So Your Worship, council does approve our budget every year, and that sets the stage for what projects and programs that we deliver. But you also approve in this policy what the spending authorities are. So as they increase, once you get above into the just let me just familiarize myself with it. Once you get into the high value ones, $50,000 and one or more, those individual projects have to come back to council for approval.
Right.
And then typically council would, subject to approval, would direct the mayor and the CAO to execute the contract for delivery of that service. However, there are things every day that, and this is why I apologize, but if there is a reference earlier on specifically that Councillor Cameron has in mind, I might be able to clarify a little better. But you do, by approving this, approve staff, a hierarchy of spending.
Right.
Up to the CAO before it would come to council.
Right.
Yeah.
And as long as it's also covered by the budget of the year.
Correct, Your Worship. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought, maybe I worded it wrong, but I was just thinking if the general public is looking through this, that, would there not be a column here that indicates that council does approve it, just for clarification and...
That doesn't need to be in the policy, but if anybody asks, that is the answer.
Like I said, throughout the whole document, it does state that. It wasn't on this schedule. So if somebody just went directly to this schedule, it would say, well, how come council's not approving these things?
And the answer is they are.
Yeah.
But it depends where it is in the process and the dollar amount. And that's the answer.
And one final question. As I read through the document, I was wondering if it should be included in the document that any for a policy that any RFPs or tenders, etc., that are sent out to the general public, that those tenders be directed directly to the CAO's office, and when they're opened by the CAO and 2 senior staff members to keep that process as clear as possible, rather than having a single person opening a document for clarification and for public interest and for the sake of being upfront and honest, if we open those documents at the CEO's desk with two senior members of staff, if that would be a better procedure rather than having a single manager or a single person opening those documents?
I can read through this, Your Worship. I'm trying to refresh my memory on it. The treasurer may have a little bit
It's
quicker
not in there,
response.
Doug. It's just something I thought.
Oh, okay.
It's just an afterthought. I thought that possibly,
So,
not to
so
bring back
we've got the question. I think the treasurer may have.
RFPs don't need to be opened in public. Those are something staff go through. They're a lot more detailed, but tenders are open in public and they're open by more than just one person. So
Yeah.
when you have a tender, you've got the treasurer or designate, you've got a second person. Very often if it's a public works tender, we'll have a public works manager here, plus any members of the public.
I guess the reason why I'm asking the question is because we ran into that last council. And I just thought for transparency that that a policy might be drafted by us, that, you know, we make sure that there's three members
Yeah, well,
opening these
yeah.
things up rather than putting it out to question, and I'm not saying to open it in front of public, I'm, you know, like three senior members of staff.
Mr. Foster?
It's, yeah, Mike, I believe,
Is it in there?
yeah, 16.5, page 15.
Did I
Sorry,
may
Mr.
have
Foster,
missed it.
could you repeat that?
Yeah, it states, clause 16.5 on page 1535, under high value request for tender. Tenders received or opened in the presence of the department head or designate, treasurer designate, as well as anyone from the general public.
Okay.
So, that's great. So,
Is that what you're-
Well, it does say that, but it doesn't say that it should be opened in front of three members. It's either the manager or the,
Well, no, it says department head and treasurer.
oh,
or
and
designate.
treasurer?
Yeah.
I thought you said or, so.
No, sorry, no, it's, yeah, department head or designate,
Or
treasurer or designate, as well as anyone from the general public.
Okay.
Okay, and that's, like we say, opening tenders, as well as people who put in the tenders can attend as well.
And that was 16.5.
Fine?
Okay, so that's indicating that.
so that's a good question, and we had a good answer. Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Oh, no problem.
Any other questions, Mr. Cameron?
Thank you very much.
And I should mention, I understand that from staff that this is, our lawyers have vetted this from a legal perspective to make sure it's all good to go. And I understand probably a number of drafts that were worked on by collectively by staff, and probably 2 or 3 times the lawyers looked at it. So, having heard questions from Mr. Cameron, any other questions? Mr. Malloy?
Yes, in reference to a letter from a resident in the town, Mr. Giles by name, and he was questioning in the High Valley tender to require the mayor or another council designate to sign documentation on behalf of the council. As it reads currently, I'm quoting now, as it reads currently, the mayor with no council discussion approval would be permitted to sign the high value tenders or RFPs. Blah, 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 blah. There is a reply here from the CAO, and states a number of things. At one point says the mayor can no more bind municipality on his own than any individual councillor can. Can you just explain this whole situation? Like, is Mr. Giles correct?
I'm not sure. Could you clarify what you mean by the situation? You mean by the
Well,
question?
I did, okay. Can you please clarify what Mr. Giles is saying? The council can, obviously, once it approves a high value tender, require that the mayor or another council designate sign documentation on behalf of all council. As it reads currently, the mayor with no council discussion approval can be permitted to sign high value tenders or RFPs.
Worship, that's not accurate.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
The response that I provided to the resident was actually after discussion with our solicitor, just to make sure we were 100% tight on that. And was what I included in the response to the resident. So the mayor does not have authority to approve a contract. It has to be approved by council as a whole in the high value tender. And then council directs the mayor to execute the contract with the CAO as co-signatories.
Right. So the question, I think perhaps the individual didn't quite understand the context of the rest of the document as we've been going through.
So would you say that he just misread it?
I wouldn't want, sorry, Your Worship.
We can't guess why the person asked the
Okay,
question.
okay.
I think the important part is, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's extremely important that how clear and concise the CAO's response was to indicate that that is not the case at all.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do you have additional comment?
Further clarification in page 15, 16.7, and 16.8, it's quite clear that these tenders are brought to council and presented to council as a whole, and the contract is awarded by council, not by the mayor.
Correct.
Good
The
job.
signing authority would be,
The mayor.
yes.
Yep. Thank you. Good questions and great clarifications from staff. Thank you both for that. If there aren't any other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And
Your Worship, that's the bylaw
okay.
related to the procedure.
And so that was the motion, members. And next is the motion to pass the actual bylaw for the procurement policy. So if I can have a mover for that, thank you, Mr. Halkney, and a seconder, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 24-2020, being a bylaw to adopt a procurement policy for the Village of Marrickville Wolford, be read a first and second time, and the bylaw 24-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And is, I believe this is required under the Municipal Act to have the, oops, sorry, I've gone a little bit too far ahead. Wrong one. That's the next one. Next, we have a request from the President of the Chamber of Commerce regarding wastewater charges for the business community. So I'll read the motion first. And there are two choices on the motion. So we got a mover and a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby receive report Finance-07-2020 regarding late charges and penalties for businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. Coronavirus pandemic for information purposes. Yeah, I know. So it was unintentional. Just swallow the wrong way if anybody is listening to this again. And the choices are, in terms of the motion, the council does hereby approve the waiving of late fees for businesses regarding water and wastewater bill payments for 2 billing periods, or the council does hereby decline waiving late fees for businesses regarding water and wastewater bill payments for 2 billing purposes. So I'll put this out on the table to lead some of the discussion, and before I take comments from council members, my view is, first, if we are going to do anything, it would be for everybody on water, wastewater. It would not just be for the business community. And given that, in the example I would use that I mentioned earlier at the top of the meeting about how it's taking time for some things that the province has said they would do, such as the under the social services umbrella, it's taken a while to put that program together and then to determine how it is going to roll out. I also mentioned at the beginning of the meeting how the business community is engaged in terms of wanting the province to put together some kind of a program to assist, particularly in the tourism businesses, a program to help them. That may take a while to determine what it is and for it to be rolled out. My sense is, in terms of equity and understanding that we do need to finance our water and wastewater, that rather than coming up with a program, because there may not need to be a program for the business community, the province may provide that for them, and I say may, and until we get those details, to take the pressure off all of our residents of water, wastewater, that we extend the current deadline until the end of April. We can revisit it between now and the end of April if the province has not done anything. But it gives time for that program to be put in place, takes the pressure off people having to pay their bill immediately and without having to get into the discussion as to whether there's a penalty for late in interest. I think that would be equitable for all of our residents. So I put it out to members. I think I saw Mr. Foster and then Mr. Cameron.
In complete agreement, Your Worship, I was going to suggest that all residents have the possible extra interest charges dropped until the next billing period, but there's nothing wrong with starting till the end of April, and then we can adjust it depending on what sort of help they get from the province. But we really don't know what's coming, and I think it would be a show of expression of goodwill and solidarity without endangering ourselves too much. I understand definitely sympathy for the Chief Financial Officer's position, that we do need the income, and it's also might be a good chance to, if we choose to make an announcement, or whether or not we do, that might be just opening a floodgate as well, but we do make our residents and businesses aware that they can contact the municipal office to arrange payment options. Stress that we're working with our businesses within this difficult period and whatever other boilerplate you want to put on it, but it certainly would be a sympathetic gesture and something that would show our solidarity with the community.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Just want to add to that comment Mr. Foster and yourself have made. I think given the extraordinary circumstances that we're under, and I was looking at some of the models projected by through the governments, that this may extend up to 8 months. So not only water and sewer, but there's going to be a lot of people within our municipality that are unable to get jobs. I've been talking to a few people that I personally know that have own their own businesses, are trying to go through the system to get money, and the system is backlogged. They're getting hung up on. They've been trying for days. I think this situation is going to become desperate for a lot of people, and I think even though we're limited to our abilities financially, what we can do, I think extending periods for everything. All money is owed to the municipality. We should not charge late fees. We should extend those plans until at least the end of summer, because we don't know how long this is going to last. And this would show some kind of a solidarity and compassion to our fellow friends and family and members of our municipality, that we are trying to do at least what we can. We're showing them.
That's right.
We don't have the financial means to forgive anybody, but we do have the compassion to understand what they're going through, because a lot of people will be without jobs probably for months.
Thank you.
Or monies, and it would be nice that we show some kind of solidarity by waiving those fees.
Mr. Foster and then Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, certainly I agree with the tone that Mike's taking, but the end of summer would be, if someone starts to get their unemployment, they're going to have a lot of things they have to pay. I agree. But part of them is paying your bills with us.
Yes.
But we have to, so my point is that we give our residents and businesses till the end of April. Mm-hmm. If there's been no relief and no government action up to them, we can reconsider our options. But the longer, if we say you don't have to pay your bills till the end of summer, there's people who are perfectly capable of paying that may not choose to pay us till the end of summer either. So all I'm stating is that a one-time gesture till the end of April could be more than sufficient and would not put us into too dangerous territory. A longer extension than that, we could get into some dangerous territory.
I think, thank you very much. I think that's important for council to not extend too far what we might do. This is in the tax bill notices and deadline has come and gone. The next one is not until the end of July. Who knows what may be put in place from the property tax point of view. At the moment, this is one that we can grapple with, and I said it, it's been repeated by two other members already. This is something that we can do that will be of immediate benefit for people, that they don't have, that bill is not due until the end of April. We'll see what other programs the senior levels of government put in place to assist, and we can adjust decisions we may beyond, if necessary, to go beyond April between now and then. Mr. Malloy, you had a question?
Yeah,
Or a
just
comment?
before we put this to the table for a vote, could we hear from the treasurer about the situation, what she foresees with something like this?
What the mayor has proposed right now to the end of April would be doable. Yes, I would have concern if we started postponing all payments, like tax payments. If we started postponing those, we could run into cash flow problems. But we don't need to deal with that right now. That's not coming until July, so.
Okay, Mr. Cameron?
Just a clarification, I'm not asking to postpone their tax payments, I'm just saying late charges.
Yeah.
You know, give them a bit of a break and give extend a timeline, because some people, I understand Mr. Foster, Councillor Foster's concern, and I would be willing to go with the end of April date and then come back and revisit this.
Yeah.
But I think it would be not only a show of
Change the
support and
wording.
compassion to
Can you
our
change the wording on that?
municipality if we extended that program to
I think
all
we're gonna go to the
municipal-
end of it.
Because not everybody is on water and sewer, so we're sort of just focusing on a group of people and excluding another group. And there are going to be some people that are under pressure. I'm not saying that we excuse any monies owed. I'm just saying that
Okay.
we don't charge late charges, we excuse those and offer some payment plans perhaps.
I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think
What
we are
I
on the same page.
want to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves and talk in terms of, well, what might we do after April 30th, whether it's water and sewage and/or the next tax installment, which is end of July, is that we focus on this and be prepared to revisit it before the end of April and deal with whatever might be to be dealt with then. So the motion it would be changed. It is still moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Malloy for consideration, members. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Maryfield Wolford does hereby receive report finance-07-2020 regarding late charges and penalties for businesses during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic for information purposes. And the Council does hereby approve waiving late fees, and it should be for all people, so we'll get the wording on that, regarding water and wastewater bill payments until the end of April 2020. And we can change that, not just businesses, to be business as residents or
All users.
whatever,
For all ratepayers, your
all
worship.
ratepayers.
Thank you, your worship.
Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I'll call the vote. Sorry, Mr. Cameron.
We're not going to consider waiving late fees for everyone, for any monies owed? We're just going to concentrate on the water and sewer, is that all we're going to do?
That's correct.
For now.
For now.
For now?
Yeah, because there aren't any due dates between now and the end of July for taxes.
Okay, and we'll revisit it at that time. Thank you.
Can we just hear how it was altered?
Pardon me?
Can we hear how it was altered?
Yes. So the significant part is, well, I'll read the whole thing. The Council of the Corporation of the Village of Maryfield Wolford does hereby receive report finance-07-2020 regarding late charges and penalties for, actually, I'm not sure if we, because it was a report regarding businesses, so maybe that shouldn't have changed. Anyway, it reads now, all ratepayers during the COVID-19 I'm having
Corona,
trouble
like the
with
beer, Corona.
Thank you. Coronavirus pandemic for information purposes, and the council does hereby approve waiving late fees for businesses. That's where we made the mistake in changing it. It's not for business. It should be, the report should have been received because it was based on the
Oh, my
request for,
apologies,
it
Your
was
Worship.
based on request for businesses, correct?
My apologies, your worship. I
That's
just
all right.
changed the wrong line on you.
Yep.
One more time.
Let me just double check what I'm doing here, your worship. So I don't
Absolutely.
send you on another goose chase here. So,
It's called getting it right once.
So that first line there, I changed incorrectly, so that is the correct word there.
Yeah, because it's a report on the request of the business community.
Correct, yeah.
Moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor Wolford does hereby receive report finance-07-2020 regarding late charges and penalties for businesses during the COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic for information purposes. And the Council does hereby approve waiving late fees for all ratepayers regarding wastewater bill payments until the end of April 2020. I don't see any other hands going up for questions or comments. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And I assume that gets tidied up for a formal motion. My suggestion, members, is that this will be conveyed on our website. It will be, I would suggest it would be in some appropriate way as any other communique might be going out in the next while, to be posted on the bulletin boards, and also perhaps in a drop mailing to reach as many people as possible. It may sound like a wee bit of overkill, but I think it's appropriate for this kind of a message to get out to any and all residents that are on water and sewer. And that drop mailing, I guess we may need to temper that a bit, because typically drop mailings would go to every resident, whereas this would be the residents in the village area that are on municipal services. So you've captured that, the essence of that.
I did, Your Worship. If council's open to it, if the timing of the next water bill works well, that all users of the water system can get it through the water bills, so that we don't incur the cost of a drop mailing. Is that
maybe I'm not sure of the cycle on that. I'm sure staff will be able to figure out the best way to do it.
Thank you, Worship. If you don't mind, I just wanted to make sure council's comfortable. If we can do it for free in the water billing, because of timing, we will do that instead of the drop mailing.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Worship.
Mr. Malloy?
What amount of timing are we allowed?
Well, we're not sure. They're going to figure out which is the best one.
Okay, so we have to come back to okay that?
No, we give them that direction. Do whichever one will expedite the process
Well,
the
the question
fastest.
What would the expedition of this look like? You know, like, is it, so for example, if we did a drop mailing, we put the drop mailing out, and it would be in people's mailboxes by Friday. Whereas I'm thinking last time I paid water, I don't know, but the next water bill is not until sometime in the April water bill.
So,
May
yeah,
31st.
that's,
Okay, well,
we don't know the answer tonight, and that's why the direction is whichever one will get to the ratepayer the fastest.
Well, that
It
wasn't
seems
said.
like the drop mailing is going to be the one.
Yeah, because that wasn't said. The idea of the fastest, that wasn't indicated.
Sure. Or if I can put it to bed right now, the treasurer can tell us the timing of the next water bill, and if it's not suitable, we could do the drop mailing and just keep the discussion narrow.
Aren't you glad you came?
The next set of water bills will be going out early May. We're due to.
Too long.
What, when?
Early May. Too long.
Perhaps we might do it sooner than
Okay,
that with the drop
so Your
mailing.
Worship, we'll do the drop mailing right away.
Mr. Foster?
I assume, I'm quite certain of keeping track of all that, but recalling the ice storm, et cetera, other provincial calamities, there's always money flowing around afterwards to cover unforeseen expenses.
We're trust me.
No, but I mean, even these mail outs, et
No,
cetera, et
yes,
cetera, would
yes,
all
I've
be-
already talked to the finance staff, and we are photocopying everything related to COVID.
Everything is being
All
tracked
costs,
as an
yeah.
expense that we would not normally incur,
I think-
including drop mailings, yeah.
Yeah.
If our economy survives this, they'll be printing money like mad, and we'll probably end up with another stimulus package like we had after the 2008 drop.
Do I get some of the money to print it with me?
Give the
No, but you'll get
next motion.
a discount on your taxes. Go and build another house, Kim.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do.
The next, members, is the statement of remuneration and expenses, which is required, I do believe, under the Municipal Act to do that annually. So a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Mr. Helpney, and a seconder, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford does hereby receive Report Finance-08-2020 regarding the 2019 Council and Board Statement of Remuneration and Expenses for information purposes. It's for Council's information, unless there are questions. Mr. Cameron?
Just a clarification, under benefits, that, Mr. Halpenny's not included in that, but that is for CPP and EI, I presume?
Yeah, that's the standard table remittances.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? You've heard the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Foster.
Just a point of interest, I don't know if all the council members under the age of 65 got their note about their increase in your CPP. I got another $4.60 a month, based on what was paid by this job for the last year.
They're charging you that, or you?
No, we're getting that with $8 in back pay, just so you know.
Oh, yeah, I got 6 and 12 in that pay.
Yeah.
Let's go drink.
Yeah.
Couldn't find a fire, so.
I don't know, it's $20. So.
Mr. Foster found it.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
I guess you have to be drawing that to get that.
If you're
that
currently
letter.
drawing CPP and working and you're under 65, then you got that slight increase. As soon as you turn 65, you don't pay CPP anymore? Or no, over 70.
Actually, if I may, when you can between the ages of 65 and 70 opt out of CPP, but there's paperwork you have to do this first, but we can find that for you. Otherwise, it does not automatically stop anymore. That was changed several years ago by the federal government.
Message received.
Thank you, members. The next is a motion regarding Enbridge Gas and the pursuit of having that extended on the north side of the river in Miracle. So mover and a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford does hereby receive correspondence from Ian Ross of Enbridge Gas, Inc., dated March the 11th, 2020, and the Council does hereby express support for natural gas expansion to the Village of Miracle Wolford, and the Council does hereby authorize CAO, Clerk, Director, Economic Development, to execute the attached letter to Enbridge Gas, Inc. And I'll ask Mr. Robertson to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Worship. So council will recall that we are aggressively pursuing the potential to expand natural gas to the north side of the river. On January 28th, and we issued a letter, I issued a letter on behalf of council to Al Monaco, the president and CEO of Enbridge Gas, expressing that interest. And as you know, you were, just to summarize momentarily, you were contacted by the Ministers of Energy and Deputy Minister of Energy, I believe,
Yes.
about the expansion opportunity through the OEB, Ontario Energy Board. So subsequent to that, Enbridge has circulated the information that you have in your agenda package today. A couple of key points here is that you will notice, I'm going to draw your attention to the document with the Enbridge logo. Both of them do. Let me explain a little clearer. So there's a letter from Enbridge dated March 11th, and then an attachment right behind that from Enbridge with the subject line Natural Gas Expansion Program, Anticipated Submission Requirements. I just want to draw council's attention to this third and fourth paragraphs in that document. And to give you the context for why I'm drawing your attention there, they have provided a template for a letter for municipalities to express interest and support from the community and from council in expanding natural gas within their communities. So the draft letter that we've provided to you does that. It's a template provided by Enbridge with some minor modifications in it. One of the paragraphs, it's the paragraph, the next page for you, the fourth paragraph starting with the word further, is included for council's consideration because Enbridge Gas has indicated that while they're not aware of any requirement that municipalities contribute financially towards to getting the OEB funding, they are suggesting here that if municipal councils do commit on the financial side, that it could have a positive influence in terms of the potential for the municipality to get the funding. And what they're proposing
For
is...
Enbridge to get the
For,
funding.
correct, your worship, actually, it's, to be accurate, you're right, for Enbridge to get the funding to expand natural gas. And the concept is that funding would pay for the capital cost of the infrastructure, and then Enbridge would charge their per cubic meter charges for natural gas once it's supplied. But what they've proposed as something that municipalities may wish to consider is waiving the property taxes associated with the pipes, with the lines in the ground that we typically receive from Enbridge for a period of 10 years after the pipes are installed. So if I may give council just a little bit of detail, the natural gas pipes in the ground south of the canal right now generate approximately $11,000 in property taxes for the municipality now. North of the canal, we get nothing because we have no natural gas lines there.
Is that per year?
That's per year. We don't know exactly where the pipes will be north of the canal, so we can't tell you exactly what they're worth, but what I could suggest to you is certainly the number of streets and the linear footage of the streets north of the canal is certainly less than half of what you have south of the canal, just using an eyeball estimate. So one would assume if the revenue that we generate from taxes south of the canal is 11,000, and I don't know the number, but I'm just proposing to council it would probably be less than $6,000 a year for a period of 10 years that Enbridge is proposing that the municipality forego for the first 10 years. So I didn't want to be presumptuous, but I had to pick which side of the fence to propose to council in the wording of the letter. I've included that fourth paragraph where council is expressing a willingness to do that. However, if council chooses not to do that, it's simply a matter of deleting that fourth paragraph and sending the letter without it.
Thank you. My comment to council would be, if it helps move us into a better position, it's not that we are losing money that we are currently receiving. It's just deferring when we would start to have a revenue coming in from those dollars once the pipes are in the ground on the north side. So if there aren't any other questions on that, I would call the motion. Mr. Cameron.
I have a question. Well, I was going to ask the question, Mr. Robertson had already answered what the cost would be to the municipality. If they are not successful in receiving this funding and we approve this and we're willing to forego those taxes for 10 years, what would be the cost to the resident on the other side? Because he had proposed if we didn't get the funding, it would be $35,000 per house.
Correct.
So would that still be the case, or would waiving of the property taxes subsidize the individuals on the other side, or what would the scenario be?
Your Worship, so my understanding is that assuming that the OEB selects our expansion proposal and fully funds it, then there is no connection cost for the individual residents. And there's a distance, I believe it's 30 meters or something to that effect. But I believe the vast majority, if not all properties on the north side of the canal would be within that distance and would be able to receive the connection for free. However, some residents who don't have the right furnace in their homes may have a significant cost to replace their furnaces.
Well, that's a
to
whole
take
other
advantage
kettle
of,
of
but
fish.
that's up to the resident.
I don't think
Worship.
anybody has a natural gas furnace on the north side.
Right.
Propane, no. Propane
Yeah.
prices.
Does that answer your question?
No. I was aware of that. My concern was if we commit to this by that paragraph saying that we're willing to get into the project, and if the natural gas is not subsidized, if they do not get the subsidy,
Right.
would they still go ahead with the project, and what cost would that be per resident?
Oh,
Because if
well, we've
we're
already-
committing ourselves,
I can-
are we stuck with
No,
the project, or
we
can
are
opt
not.
out of it?
No, what we are saying is we are supporting through the local supplier Enbridge to the Ontario Energy Board to make a recommend, for them to do their analysis, if you will, to make a recommendation to the province, for the province to say they'll get, in this case, I think the round number was $2 million to put the service in place. If Enbridge does not get the money, we're back where we are right now, which is no service on the north side. Enbridge is saying if they were to do it, and their estimate is that $2 million still is the $2 million, and it would work out to about $35,000 per house. So we'd be back at square one. There's no commitment by, let's put it this way, for Enbridge to go ahead without the without the cross subsidization. They'd be knocking on every door and saying, with probably some legal document saying, if you want natural gas, sign here, you're on the hook for $35,000. So that's the way it is at the moment. That's why we're working with them to best efforts and to get funding to move ahead at no cost to the individual residents for the bringing of natural gas up and down the streets on the north side.
Yeah, I understand all that. I was concerned that if the funding or partial funding was only allowed, what would that do to the residents on the north side? Would that subject them to $35,000, $10,000, $15,000? And
so the answer is no one would. The answer is no one would be forced to do anything. Individually, residents would have to agree to some, and I would imagine to be some kind of a legal document, given that it's $35,000 for Enbridge to move forward. So no one is there is no default to say, oh, if this doesn't go through, you guys are on the hook for something. So
nor is the municipality. We would not be on the hook for it either.
We are not either. Correct.
Okay, so we do have. If the funding doesn't go through, we are not obligated to proceed with this.
Correct.
Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. And next we move down there to the two additions to the agenda. One is the library, and it's a copy of the Facebook page.
Or website.
Or website, rather. Thank you. You want to speak to that, Mr. Robertson?
I certainly, Yours. I just wanted to draw this to council's attention, given council's concern and the fact that we've activated the Emergency Operations Center, and that this is a matter of safety. It's been brought to my attention that the library, while the provincial government has legislated that all libraries close, and I believe the library board decided that as well, and also certainly the Municipal Emergency Control Group directed that all municipal facilities close for the safety of the public and to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. The website seems to suggest that the library is continuing to operate in some capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
My sense is closed is supposed to mean closed. And would have a concern of how, when I know the extensive work staff did in this building to ensure separation and the cleaning and so on, because even though the building isn't even open to the public, it concerns me when we look at the things that I said, not that I came up with, the things that I said in terms of at the beginning of the meeting, in terms of the separation, et cetera, and and today the Prime Minister saying enough is enough. It only takes one little misstep, if you will, for this virus to be community spread. I think I don't know what the process would be to say that when the library is closed, the library is closed, and things don't move out of the library to the public. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the library staff that we have, because there are two librarians that work in there. Generally speaking, I think this is I don't know. It may be well intended, but can have horrible ramifications. And if we're going to be saying that a facility is shut down, it's shut down. Mr. Cameron.
Yeah, I agree. If the library was ordered to shut down, you can't, when books are being returned, they can't go through the book page by page, disinfecting each and every book that's in and out of it. So, I mean, it's impossible to control that, and it was my understanding that we, as council, decided that we were closing all these facilities, so why are we not closed?
Yeah, that was the recommendation of the emergency control group as well, that buildings shut down.
I think that.
Mr. Foster.
Make that clear to the library that,
Just, I wasn't checking my mail, and I was just checking, doing a little quick research. How long can the new coronavirus linger on surfaces? They don't know.
Exactly.
New analysis has indicated that it's viable in the air for up to 3 hours, on copper for up to 4 hours, on cardboard up to 24 hours.
Yeah.
So the fear would be the books coming back into the library contaminated, and our library staff getting sick, so we really don't have any choice but to shut it down.
So if we're all agreeing that this service, that it should not be taking place, what, I turn to staff to say, what is the process to say, stop this? Is it us, or is it the library board, or a combination of the two?
So that's where the dilemma lies.
Okay.
The library does not report to me as CAO. The library board reports to council, but their meetings have been suspended, so they don't have a mechanism for deciding. However, I'm certainly open to taking direction from council if you'd like me to contact somebody and draw their attention.
My suggestion is, if council concurs, that the CAO contact the chair of the board and to say, the library should be closed. You know, you guys manage, if you will, the library, ensure that this stops. Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, I think there's two issues here. First issue is that the library building belongs to us, right? The operations, no, it does. The operations inside are for the library board, but the building itself belongs to the municipality. And we, a little while ago, shut all municipal buildings.
Yep.
Therefore, ergo, the library should be closed.
Yep.
I think that goes without saying. Secondly, I think I forgot my second point, so I won't just blather on about it, but it'll come to me in a minute. I think it just should be shut that way.
Mr. Foster? Foster.
It is, I was very much in favor of the idea of takeout books, because you're running restaurants as takeout restaurants. But in the efforts that our management and staff have gone to protect staff, we're not running a restaurant either. So, no, just shut her down.
I think,
Are you okay?
Thank you, Richard. So I'll take that as a direction. I'll contact the chair of the board and inform of the council's concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Malloy?
And if I'm not mistaken, the provincial regulations have stated that all non-essential services are to be shut down.
They did that today, yeah.
Yeah, but the library, okay, just but my.
Part of that, yes.
My point is, the library, as nice a service as it is not essential.
Yep.
yeah, a lot of it can be accessed online too, so I mean, it's not like you're
And
shutting it down
that's
completely.
absolutely right. And it's I don't want to say, not to play a game, not suggesting this is a game, but closed is closed. And having some kind of a takeout drive-through service, if you will, to use the connotation of say some restaurants, is no exceptions, no exemptions. I think we're quite clear, members, and you got the message all right to
Thank you, Richard.
proceed with
Yeah.
it. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And the next item that was an addition to the agenda is regarding our procedure bylaw. And members, you will know that under. Sorry, you had a question back to
I
the
just
library,
wanted to
Mr. Cameron?
know that,
Is that what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, whenever Mr. Robertson contacts whomever he's gonna contact, could he forward that to council so that we're aware that the contact has been made and the result of that conversation that he's had?
I don't know that we need that report back to us. The direction is tell them to keep it closed final. I don't think we need a report back. If there's a problem, I'm sure the CEO will get back to us.
A reassurance, he doesn't have to get into detail, just, like a reassurance that he's spoken to somebody and that the problem's been taken care of, so that we're aware of.
Does members wish to have that kind of report back?
you think that's necessary or not necessary?
I'm confident that.
Well, I'm confident that he can do it, just so that we're in the loop, we know what's going on.
Why don't we just assume that it's being taken care of?
Okay, I'd be happy with that then. Thank you.
The next item is regarding our procurement bylaw, and members will know the province changed the provincial legislation allowing municipalities, should they not have quorum, to have members attend electronically to be able to meet quorum. And while everybody looks fit and fiddle this evening, and we trust that it continues that way, should there be an occasion where members are not able to attend to reach a quorum, what this bylaw will do is put in place allowing us to do that should it be necessary. We hope it doesn't need to be necessary, but better to have the tool in the basket. As we've been talking earlier this evening on a couple of the items, who knows how long the circumstance will last. You know, we certainly know it's going to be more than weeks and months, and could be a protracted period of time. So better to have this in place now than if we need it in the future. Mr. Foster, Mr. Malloy.
And how would we conduct a meeting electronically?
Yeah, that was my.
The details will be sorted out in terms of, you know, what kind of
So, but that's, I'm not being an asshole, or pardon me, but just a telephone call, like a speakerphone?
it's big. Well, they use the word electronic, so I'll turn to staff to expand on that a little bit.
So, Your Worship, the Deputy Clerk and I discussed this afternoon, and the provincial government has been wide open on us. They've only specified by electronics. They haven't specified what type.
Okay.
So, and I suspect that they've done that because recognizing the various different circumstances of different municipalities and what tools they have. So that's something that we will explore. I'm sure it will come to light as we watch municipalities throughout the province adopting different practices and so forth, and we would be coming back to council if needed with a mechanism for doing that in some way.
Pastor may want to check, touch base with the county. My recollection, we did this at the county council meeting last week, and there was reference or a question, if you go in camera, can you participate? And because some people might be using a cell phone are not the same as a landline or an internet or something like that, they changed the wording that you would be responsible to if it is an in-camera item. So the conversation was around the use of phones. So you might want to might be worthwhile checking to see what the county has learned as to whether phones are going to be a vehicle by which you can be attending electronically. Mr. Foster.
Yeah, my question wasn't so much the what's allowed as what are we capable of?
Yep.
And will we make certain that we have the means available to us for a conference call, for example?
Yep.
So that we have not that we're trying to put it together at the last minute. If we can bring in a tech person to get this taken care of, it'll be something that will be of value to us. I know we've had our auditor sit in on a meeting, I think, or our lawyer sit in on an in-camera session, but to have 4 or 5 of us linked by telephone, I want to make sure.
And I think, though, that's, you know, with these kinds of questions, that's what staff will be looking into and have in place should we need to go there, answer those kinds of questions so that they're in place, whether it be.
Again, sorry not to nitpick,
Yeah.
but not should we need to go there,
Yeah,
when we need to go
when,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, fair enough, yes, you're
So we
right.
don't wait till the meeting.
No, I understand, Mr. Foster, but yeah, good to, on the wordsmithing there.
Yeah.
Mr. Robertson.
Okay, I can perhaps put Councillor Foster's mind at ease right now, that we immediately, right now, we do have the capacity to have a conference call. So
Okay.
we'd give you a number to call into,
Yeah.
you'd enter a code, we would put you on the speakerphone, anybody that was here would hear you, and you would hear anybody else that's
And you
here.
can have multiple users on the conference call.
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. Now, that's all I wanted to know. So
On the other hand,
Mr. Malloy.
I wouldn't mind if the municipality bought me a computer, that would do it.
Yeah, it's in the budget, Tim.
Is it?
It's under waste management.
I'm going to read the motion so we can get a little more focused here, and if I could move her in a seconder, I would read the motion. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 26-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 30-17, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 26-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. Aren't any other questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
That was the, that's
Yeah.
In addition.
And this is a motion to suspend the regularly scheduled meetings of council. As you know, at the beginning of the year, we put in a bylaw the schedule of meetings.
If I may, Your Worship, those are resolutions.
Resolution,
of the
yep,
schedule
okay,
for this
that's
year.
why I was looking for you for clarification. So mover and a seconder, please, for this motion. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford does hereby suspend the regularly scheduled council meetings until the call of the mayor. Are there any questions on that? Now, Mr. Foster.
So we would, if no one's ill and everything is fine and dandy in April, you'll just call a meeting whenever you.
So repeat that
You will
again.
stick to the schedule if there is no crisis.
If there was no crisis, we'd be sticking to our schedule, correct?
Yeah, because we have, effectively by passing this, we have suspended our regularly schedule.
Correct.
But this is, so it's understood then that
Everything is by call.
everything's by call, you'll determine
Correct.
for the duration, okay.
Correct.
Should we put in for the duration of the crisis, or? This is a bit like voting Putin president for life here, not that I'm inferring that you're an oligarch or a despot, but this just.
And in charge of nothing.
In charge, but just the wording of this suggests that we have voted to suspend our regularly scheduled council meetings indefinitely. I'm just wondering if we could wordsmith that to reflect.
Yeah, it's worthwhile putting something in, and I'll let staff figure out what the wording would be.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Well, the state of emergency exists in the province of Ontario, perhaps, or wording along those lines. Like that's the, when Ontario hit the big red panic button,
Yeah.
that warrants a lot of actions. I'm just suggesting that we include that while the state of emergency exists in the province of Ontario, we will meet at the discretion of the mayor.
Yeah. That's good wording.
We don't want people to think.
If it's not perfect wording, it certainly covers the intent
Yeah.
of what we're doing and for how long we're doing it for.
I can just imagine some members of the public getting hold of that.
May, Your Worship, just clarification, so I've got until the call of the mayor or until the state of emergency in the province of Ontario ends. Would council like to add there, or whichever occurs first, or which?
I think that covers the spirit, I think it covers the spirit of it. I'm sorry, Mr. Loy?
Can we get it read one more time, please? Or two more times?
So moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford does hereby suspend the regularly scheduled council meetings until the call of the mayor or until the state of emergency in the province of Ontario ends.
Okay.
That's capturing the spirit of our intent. If there aren't any questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Sorry, Your Worship.
And we have a confirmatory bylaw, so mover and a seconder for that. And thank you, Mr. Foster, and the seconder by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 22-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting of March the 23rd, 2020 be read a first and second time, and the bylaw 22-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And before I read the motion to adjourn, I just want to repeat that please stay safe, sound, and healthy, council members, staff, and together we will work through this as we are able to from a municipal perspective. So thank you very much. Mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Mr. Helpley, thank you. Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that this regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Miracle Wolford does now adjourn at 8:35 PM until a call of the mayor is subject to need. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.